live edition here on the Rock Pile. The Rock Pile tonight brings back the No Huddle podcast here on the Rock Pile with Coach Medicis, Coach DeCola, and Nick from C-Bus. We had a few technical difficulties here prior to the show. The first time I think we've had some difficulties in a little while, but I think we got it straightened out. So we'll bring on the guys, and then after the show, I'll let everybody know when we'll do another round of shows. But until then, let's see if I can get the guys on here. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Coach, good to talk to you, buddy.
It's good to be up and running now.
I know right. It is. We got Jake's on his phone today, so hopefully Jake will you'll be able to get through today.
Hopefully.
I don't know what happened. We usually don't have any issues getting on tonight.
No, and I usually have one of the better computers than Nick does than his wife's computer.
I know, and I'm going to move you guys. We're going to get you guys all on. There we go. I got to see you guys.
Oh, jeez.
So, you guys, we got a fun show here today. We're going to talk about more. It seems like every time we do these shows, we're talking about vacant openings with teams that have made some decisions here in the beginning part of the season. They've moved on. A lot of coaching vacancies. We'll do some predictions tonight. We'll do our team spotlights and more. I got the chat open. I'm sure we'll get some posts from Cody. Nick, I'm sure he'll be posting some stuff. I'm sure my brother-in-law will be on here at some point in time. But let's first start with the team spotlights as we always do. We'll spotlight Ohio State, Clemson. We usually do Syracuse, Michigan. So, Jake, I'm going to start with you. Talk Clemson.
Well, last time we talked, Clemson had two big tests coming up with Wake Forest and NC State. Wake Forest was a little bit of a scare. Hartman is a very good quarterback, and he kind of shredded the defense a little bit. But luckily, they found it together, and DJ actually had a great game and was able to run the ball and throw for a lot of yards. And they came out at the end on overtime. And then they had NC State at home, 5-10. NC State was a great game. Usually Clemson was up about 17 most of the way, and then NC State answered 10 points ahead. But two big wins, especially in the ACC with the division. Now it leaves Syracuse is the only unbeaten team in the Atlantic Coast Conference. So we have to, I guess, watch out for them. We'll probably hear it from Medicis coming up. But I'm very thrilled how DJ is improved since last year, and you kind of see the improvements, and him running the ball, I think, helped them a lot. So obviously this week they got Boston College. Can't sleep on anyone, but it's, they get a little bit of breather before Florida State, and obviously the undefeated Syracuse Orangemen come in.
Clemson question for the group here. So two things. You guys know, of course, I'm high on Wake, as I always am. The talk so far through the first 4 weeks for Clemson, Jake, has been the front seven for Clemson is one of the best in the country. Now, they played against Wake Forest, who I've said all year. Wake returned everybody on offense, and I think we had talked about it on the radio show. We didn't know when Sam Hartman was going to come back. We didn't think he'd come back this soon. They give up over 40 points to Wake. Is Wake's offense that good, or is Clemson's defense not as good as advertised so far through the first 4 weeks?
Well, I still think they're still figuring out the defensive coordinator. Venables was there forever. And even though they're kind of trying to do the same style of defense, it's still a new defense, and how the play calling is everything with him calling stuff. And I think it's just going to get time for them to get used to it. It's both sides are brand new coordinators too. So it's just getting a feel of those guys calling the game and everything. But, the nice part is a win's a win. They got out of that game, and Hartman's a very, very good top 5 quarterback in the nation.
And I guess and I'll let C-Bus, I'll let you and Medicis chime in if you want. But the other question I have is we're hearing all these players, C.J. Stroud, obviously, Bryce Young, a lot of these guys being mentioned for the Heisman Trophy, and rightfully so. My question is, why isn't Sam Hartman being even mentioned in the same category? Maybe not a top 3 or 4 pick, but I think he's one of the best top 10 players in the country right now. And from a stat perspective, he's putting up just as good as numbers as some of these other guys. Is it because he's on a Wake Forest, which, still not many people believe in?
Absolutely. I think I think it's a it's a Wake Forest issue. I mean, I agree, right? Like, I mean, he spins the ball, he can play. He's definitely a guy that I think is definitely going to get a chance in the league to make some noise as well. He's a lot what what you want to see. The only thing I would push back on Jake and around that, or your kind of comment, Rock, around their defense, right? Is like Clemson before they played Wake played like Furman and Louisiana Tech.
Yeah.
And I mean, so anybody's front seven looks, better look darn good against some of those schools, right? And I felt like Wake, is probably going to be the best offense they see all year, before maybe they get to the ACC championship game, and probably before that, right? So, or even after that. So I think, I don't think it's a knock necessarily on Clemson's front seven. I just not sure that they faced any test until they face Wake, and they're probably not going to face one as strong through the regular season.
Medicius, you got that look on your face. Were you going to say until they face that juggernaut of that Syracuse Orange offense?
It's more the Syracuse defense, but to jump in on Sam Hartman, I think this quarterback class projecting to the NFL is very strong as well. This is one of the deeper ones that we've had in the last couple of years. So Sam Hartman not being a top 5 quarterback isn't anything against him. It's just, you're projecting out Richardson, Stroud, Young, all these guys that are top 15, 20 picks. I mean, this draft could have 5 quarterbacks go in the first round. It's nothing against Sam Hartman. On other years, he could be a top 5 pick.
Mm-hmm.
But this year's class is just so strong and so deep that I think he gets pushed aside. And then the fact that he plays at Wake Forest. I mean, if he's at Auburn, if he's at, not that top tier, but if he's at a storied program, I think he's also in the news a little bit more. So, again, he'll let us play, do all the talking, and he'll be fine, and he'll be right up there. But, again, I think being at Wake Forest, unfortunately, he's got to do a little bit more than everyone else.
Well, I was surprised watching the Kentucky game. They said that guy was the 3rd quarterback off the board for pros, which I was shocked with.
Yeah, they like Levis a lot.
Hey, Primetime says his son Shador Sanders should be mentioned for the Heisman Trophy, but I'll say this: the number 1 ranked quarterback in the FCS, guys, Tim DeMorath from Fordham University. So Dion better come after Fordham first, because his son's not even a top quarterback in the FCS. But anyways, Medicius, give me the Orange 5-0, my man. I got him 5-7. I got him losing the next 7.
Look out.
Could happen.
I mean, you are part of the media, so you're going to give your honest and not biased take.
He's got him 9-3. Who the hell are they going to beat the rest of the way?
All right, so let's dive into Syracuse a little bit. I think if you look at their schedule, and I think we talked about this on the radio show, I mean, you could really break their season up into 3 parts. The first 5 games, we're kind of like a feeler of where they're going to be at. The next 3 is the true test to see, is this team, can they contend? Are they a middle tier team? And then the last couple games of the year, those are normally the games that they find a way to lose. And we've seen this story before where Syracuse starts strong and then loses 7 in a row and doesn't go to a bowl again. So, again, I'm not holding my breath on anything. I did go in saying that I thought they were going to be 8-4 or 9-3, because I did think that, again, I thought the schedule wasn't as strong as everybody made it out to be. No, Louisville's been really disappointing so far.
Mm-hmm.
Purdue played without some guys, and again, Purdue had a big win this week, but Syracuse had no business winning that game. They struggled against a Virginia team that got hammered by, an Illinois team that's kind of surprising some people. So, yes, they're 5-0, but I think we'll learn a lot more in these next 3 games. I think if they go 2-1 in the next 3 games, you'd be like, wow, they're going to be a pretty good team. If they go 1-2, they're okay. They go 0-3, they are what Rock thought they were.
Well, listen, they got to play Boston College. I'm going to chalk that up as a win. But I think for Syracuse fans, to sit there and look at the first 5 games of the schedule and say, We're 5-0. We're ranked in the top 25. A bowl game is really in sight. They got to sneak one of these games out against, NC State, Wake, Clemson. They get NC State at home next week, which the dome should be sold out. There should be 50,000 people there.
Yeah, they already sold 40,000 tickets for that game. And I know we just talked Sam Hartman, but I mean, Garrett Schrader deserves some love as well. I mean, he went 17-17 last game, 230 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's only thrown
Against
one
two,
pick on the
against
year.
two.
Take that,
Come
Wagner.
on.
Take that,
Wagner.
Wagner.
Come
I got
on.
him.
Hey, listen,
Come
I don't
on.
say anything when you guys are playing all these other nonsense teams. Let us enjoy our win. Hey, listen.
You played against 2 teams that didn't have a win last year.
All right. First off, UConn just beat Fresno State, so they now have a win. And let's be real. If Clemson or Ohio State were playing Wagner and they're up 49-0, they wouldn't have that gentlemanly, hey, let's deduct some time. Let's get everybody out of here. We got to focus on NC State.
I'll say this. I've told you the one thing I've been impressed with Syracuse is defensively, the speed that they have on defense right now. I haven't seen that at Syracuse in a long time. So whether they go 7-5, 6-6, 8-4, if they get to a bowl game this year, that's a win for Syracuse. They realistically, though, they could lose the next 7 games and finish 5-7. But I think they steal one. I think they do get one of those games. Nick, they play Wake Forest really well every year. NC State, I still think, isn't the NC State that everybody talked about in the preseason. So I think those are 2 winnable games. They're not going to go into Clemson and beat Clemson. No matter how well they've played Clemson in the past, they're not beating Clemson in Clemson.
I do have one question for Nick. Who has a better record, Tommy DeVito or Syracuse this year?
Syracuse.
I don't know. Illinois is 4-1.
Well, but if you look at Illinois' schedule,
they don't have to play Penn State. They don't have to play Ohio State. They have Michigan left.
And again, you can say what you want about Syracuse's schedule. They still have a Pittsburgh team that's kind of struggling. They're hit or miss.
Yep.
They got Boston College. They play Wake Forest well every year. They always play Clemson tough. Not saying they're going to beat them, but they play them tough. And Notre Dame, you know what? I mean,
that's right. I forgot.
Don't know. So again, I'm not saying they win those games, but I don't think there's a game that they go in that they say, hey, you know what, you have no chance to win this game.
I think from an outsider's perspective, it's kind of funny that I don't know what kind of love Babers is getting up there, right? But you guys were, we had a couple shows last year where we were debating on we're running out of town and what is he worth, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden he comes in, rights the ship, wins the first 5 games on the schedule.
Coach of the year.
Yeah, well, maybe.
ACC Coach of the year if they has a winning record.
You bring in a good coordinator, good things happen. I'll say that.
Well, that's what a good head coach does, though.
Absolutely.
Surrounds himself with talent, right? I mean, that's I mean, the Purdue game to me, transfer portal to the Purdue game to me was one of the wilder games I've seen all year. Between the back and forth in that fourth quarter, I don't think I've ever seen anybody attempt a kickoff from the opposing team's 35-yard line there to end the game. But hey, I mean, at the end of the day, Jake's going to celebrate, beating Wake and squeaking by Wake when they didn't have any business winning that game. And so, Syracuse gets that dub all day. So,
C-Bus, let's stay with you in Ohio State. So not only do they beat Whiskey, they get a coach fired. 2 weeks later, and Paul Chryst, who we'll get into, because I still think that was a bad move for Wisconsin, but we could talk about that. But give me the Buckeyes right now. I'm gonna give you my spoiler when we get into our top 4. Yeah, I got Ohio State at 1.
Oh well, we appreciate that. We're not too worried about where we're at in October, but no, I mean Ohio State's doing what they're really doing everything that everything I'm looking for them to do so far, right? Leading the nation in scoring. I think they're at like 48. Almost 49 points a game. I've been encouraged with the offense, with the balance. I thought a big issue for them last year was, really relying too much on the passing game and not being able to run the ball when other teams knew you were going to run the ball. And I think they really started setting that tone against Notre Dame in the fourth quarter. They were able to go on about an 85-yard drive where they just ran the ball basically down Notre Dame's throat, and they haven't really stopped. Henderson, takes the Rutgers game off, and Mayan Williams comes out and runs for five TDs and kind of goes down that path. I think offensive line looks great. I'll be honest, I'm not sure what to think about the defense. I like what I've seen so far. Linebacker play has definitely been better. Tommy Eichenberg has been a really pleasant surprise. Outside run and being an All-American this year. Their D line looks the part against the run. I'm a little concerned that I don't see a lot of pass rush generated from the front four, and they have not played Murderer's Row yet from a schedule perspective. They're not going to be tested this week against Michigan State. I think their secondary has been banged up. Obviously, we know Jackson Smith-Jigba has been out as well for the majority of the year, which has been, I think a benefit almost to them offensively because it's allowed some of these other younger receivers to get even more playing time. But I think, as I look and sit here, I'm ready for them to get to the bye week, which is next week. Would like them to get Jigba back healthy, get the secondary back healthy, and then we get to play Iowa, who will probably score 6 points against us, and then we get real because then we got to play Penn State, following week. So we're getting ready to hit that stretch of the schedule now where it's like Ohio State actually has to venture away from home. We've started out with a 5-game homestand to start the season, so they do got to go to East Lansing. So it'll be interesting to see, where that comes. But we got a test coming with Penn State. We know that, and I got Maryland circled a second to last game of the year before they have the team up north come in. They got to go to Maryland, and Maryland gives me a little pause there. So all in all, status report, we're humming along. Things are going well, but I've seen this long enough to know things can turn on a dime. So we're cautiously optimistic.
I will be at the Penn State game, Nick.
Oh, right.
I have not box seats, but I have really, 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 really good seats for that game.
Nice.
We're going down on a Friday night, and we'll be there Friday and Saturday for the game. But I've heard it's going to be a noon kick because the World Series is Saturday night on Fox. So I think it's going to be a noon kick. I was going to say, I said it last Sunday, I was hoping they'd both be undefeated, but Michigan plays Penn State
before
that. So I hope they're not
undefeated. Hope not undefeated. Yeah, I mean, I think it's that's a game traditionally we going to Penn State is always a difficult run for us. And I'll be honest, I don't think people are talking a ton about Penn State. They've handled business. They've won a couple different ways. They've won in ugly weather. They've won offensively. They've won with their defense. I'm not saying they're on the talent level of even Ohio State or Michigan right now, but what gives me, as a Buckeye fan, what gives me a little bit of pause is I think James Franklin in-game coaching leaves a lot to be desired, right? So I tend to think if they get in a close game, he'll probably find a way to screw that up. But the Big Ten East shaping up to be another run at it, another gauntlet. So we'll take it.
Yeah.
So, Steve, did you get scared with Day backing up from the Rutgers coach, Schiano coming over?
No, not at all. I thought, yeah, I like the fire from both sidelines in that scenario. I get Schiano being upset that their team's getting their teeth kicked in, but I like Day sticking up for his guys as well. I thought both coaches handled it exactly how, if you were a player on either one of those teams, you would want your coach to react.
I will say that I get where Ryan Day was saying, and Jake, you talked about this, I think, Sunday. Coaches do practice, that's that rugby style kick that if nothing's there, they do coach that where you can tuck it and you can go. I fully understand Ryan Day's explanation, but you're up 49-10. Even if it's there for you to run it, kick the football. Don't run it. Kick the football.
I don't think he told the punter to run it.
No, he didn't.
Yeah, I think the punter made the decision, but I think it's also that fine line too, right? I mean, these kids only get 11 or 12 games a year. They bust their tail, man, all year. I'm with you, Rock, but then part of me is like, hey, if you don't like it, stop it, right? Like there's a fine line, there's a balance there, And I'm sure Day privately talked to the punter and probably told him like, "Hey, come on, man, look at the scoreboard, know your situation."
Well,
But I
think
also
they
think
hugged.
instinctively, if you're also Day, I think you also don't want to take away the punter's instinct there either, right? Because you might need him to make that play when it matters, down the road. So it's a fine line, I'm sure, to walk.
Well, I think they hugged it out after the game. Didn't
Oh
they?
yeah,
Didn't Shiano and
they're
they hug it
fine.
out?
Yeah, that
I
was a
still, I still
that was
don't
a
think Shiano's going to send any Christmas cards to, to Ryan Day or anything like that. But
no, and I don't think Dave's going to lose any sleep over
no,
it either. I think
no.
those are two.
But who would you take in a match? Who you?
Greg Shiano.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would take Shiano too, and I love Ryan Day, but
Greg Shiano.
Greg Shiano has got that cage bear
I mean, I guess the other
mentality.
thing
Huh?
you
I don't
can
know about
probably
that.
say is Ohio State really hasn't putted much all season. I
Right.
guess they got to practice some special teams,
Right. Got to get it in
but
somewhere. Right. But no, optically it didn't look great. I'll give you that for sure.
so Michigan's been on upset alert by all the ESPN people just about every week,
For
right?
who?
They were on upset
Oh,
alert
geez.
to Maryland. They were on upset alert to Iowa. I will say this offensively, and I don't know if it's because, again, two offensive coordinators, which I've never been a fan of, even with the New England Patriots, right? Two offensive coordinators. I don't believe in that. I don't believe you have two of them. I think Harbaugh should have went with one of them. But some people have said, is he being conservative because Cade Mack, he doesn't have a backup quarterback. You don't want to get McCarthy hurt. With all the weapons they have on the perimeter, I'm a little disappointed. I'm not overly concerned yet because Ceebus, as you said, I mean, that was Michigan's first away game all season. They've
Yep.
played 4 cupcakes. I think Maryland's better than what people think.
I do too.
I think Mike Locksley's got that program much better, but Michigan should beat Maryland. And Kinnick's a tough place to play. Michigan hasn't won there at all since 2005. So a road win's a road win, but they've got to get some explosive plays in the passing game. They're not going to beat Nick. They're not going to beat the Ohio States of the world kicking field goals in the red zone. They're going to have to score 30, 40 points a game. And right now, offensively, the bright spot's been Blake Corum, who looks really good. And listen, Harbaugh did it last year. Harbaugh won games last year running the football behind that big offensive line. But you're not going to be able to stop Ohio State. They don't have the edge rushers they had a year ago. They're not getting to the quarterback like they did. I think the defense is good, but nowhere near what it was, a year ago with Hutchinson and Ojabo on the perimeter there. So I'm a little worried offensively in the pass game because we've heard all this about McCarthy, but now this is the first time he's your starting quarterback. It's a lot different, as you guys have said, from preparing to be a starting quarterback to coming in as a backup and playing periodically. So I'm a little concerned because they do have a lot of weapons on the outside. They haven't been explosive downfield yet.
Yeah, I think I spent a good chunk of time watching the Iowa game, and was texting back and forth with a couple buddies who are big Michigan fans, unfortunately. And in that discussion, the question I've had is similar to what I brought up about Clemson. Is I think Michigan's defense looks better than I thought they were going to look, but then I also look at who they played, and outside of the Maryland test, which I give them a pass because I think Maryland's offense is solid, and I think Tua's brother is decent, and a really good quarterback for Big Ten standards. I just don't know where that big play. They were really good about big play defense last year, right? Whether it was edge rushing or whether it was them making a big play in the passing game from an interception standpoint or forcing a turnover. And that's my other kind of question mark that I have on them. What I've seen the change in Michigan that I feel like with this offensive coordinator and really started last year is there's more athletes showing up at Michigan. You can see the separation between Ohio State and Michigan speed wise and athleticism wise.
It's getting better.
That gap is closing. I don't think it's closed, but it's closing. And so that's something that I've noticed really started last year, but I've even noticed it carry over this year, which is a good sign for Big Ten.
See, I worry about and Jake, I mean, you could speak to this as well, But what I worry about, like with Michigan, is I think the back half, I mean, they return a lot of secondary guys. I think the back half is good. But if you don't have a pass rush and you can't get, and I'm just going to say, CBUS, Ohio State, if they
Yep.
can't get to the quarterback
Oh,
and
yeah.
Stroud's got all day to throw the ball, I don't care how good the secondary is, he's going to pick you apart. Last year, when you watch that game and you
Sure.
see the pressure that Hutchinson and Ojabo put every time Stroud dropped back the pass, he had somebody in his face. If you don't have that, I don't care how good that back half is, you are going to get picked apart. And that's what scares me because they have not gotten to the quarterback through the first 4 or 5 games.
Yeah. That's a good point.
And I worry about that. But we'll see. This week's another week. Indiana, they're on upset alert again. I was just reading before
Oh, yeah. I'm sure.
before I came in. But hey, listen, Iowa's a top 10 defense, number 1 scoring defense in the country. So
Oh, yeah, Iowa's defense. It's amazing that Iowa can't find a way to score points because if they could, they'd be a really tough team because that defense is on the field for 85% of the game, and they still find a way to bring it. So that's impressive for sure.
And it's amazing how many for Iowa, they got pro athletes on the offensive side that when you watch Sunday football, it's like Iowa. It's like those guys came from Iowa and they still can't score,
But you know what it
points.
is? How many times do we talk about, though, and I yell at all the time, is some of these schools can't find a quarterback. Notre Dame can't find a quarterback. How can Iowa and these teams not find a quarterback? Even in the transfer portal, with all the quarterbacks that are out there.
And Ferentz is kind of cooked. I mean, how do you fire your kid? His kid's the
you can't.
Quarterback coach and the offensive coordinator. What's he going to? I mean, he's going to go out. Ferentz is going to go down with him because he's definitely never getting rid of. He's not going to fire his kid.
I think he just puts his kid back at a position coach and brings in
Hires
another
an
coordinator.
Yeah.
I would be surprised. But guys, while we're talking about coaches, so 2 more jobs come up. So Nebraska parts ways with Scott Frost, and Mickey Joseph is now the interim head coach. So Georgia Tech fires their coach. The interim coach gets the job, and they win last week against Pittsburgh. So when you look at those 2 jobs, which one's the more attractive job? Medicis, I'll start with you, Medicis. Which one's the more attractive job?
I think based on the money and the tradition of the school, I think it's Nebraska. I don't know that Georgia Tech is really a football school per se, but I think going to Nebraska and trying to bring back what Tom Osborne did in the late '90s and what Barry Switzer, and there's a lot of tradition at Nebraska, and Georgia Tech to me has never been a football school. I mean, you have your Calvin Johnsons and your random people that have came out of Georgia Tech, but it doesn't strike me as a football school. And again, the gap between Georgia Tech and the better teams in the ACC is a lot bigger than Nebraska and being competitive in the Big Ten. I don't think Nebraska that's a gig that you're going to go and knock off Ohio State anytime soon. But to be competitive, I mean, Scott Frost every year, he comes in with expectations. Oh, we lost 7 games, but we lost 6 of them by under 10 points. So the following year we're going to come in, and then they turn around, they lose to Georgia Southern. So I think the potential is there to win at Nebraska. I think it's a place you can recruit at. I just don't see it with Georgia Tech unless all of a sudden they find somebody they like Rock, you were talking about Dion going to Georgia Tech and them just saying, hey, bring in the AD that you want and have all the money you can. But I just don't see that happening. I think Nebraska's the better gig.
Jake, how about you?
Well, the thing with Georgia Tech, I mean, walking in behind, I forget the coach's name, I think it's Johnson, who ran the triple option. And you have to change your whole offense and get different type of players there and everything. That was going to take a while, and they do have the quarterback there that's helping out, but I would say Georgia Tech, you could probably last a little bit longer there than Nebraska. Nebraska, whoever they bring in wants to win right now and right away. Where Georgia Tech, I think you're going to have some time, because especially with even with the new AD coming in, they're going to give them more time. Where Nebraska, you got basically 3 years. You better get at the top of the Big Ten. Where Georgia Tech, hey, they'll probably allow you to have more building steps. Hey, we want a winning season, we want a bowl, and then start competing that way. So it all depends on what you're looking for. Obviously, I think Nebraska would be easier to turn over real quick, but if you don't do it real soon, you could be in trouble.
C-Bus, what do you think?
Oh, I don't think it's a discussion. I think if you're telling me who's the better attractive job, it's Nebraska all day, every day, right? I mean, like it or not, as down as Nebraska has been, if you don't want to call them a blue blood in college football, they're right there from a fan base perspective, from a facilities perspective. They got money coming out their ears within that program, right? So I think from an attractive perspective, it's Nebraska all the time. I think Nebraska needs a culture changer. They need somebody that's going to come in and shake that up and try to modernize them. They need somebody that is going to not only produce on the field but off. I mean, their 5-year recruiting average at Nebraska, they finished 24th over the last 5 years in recruiting, which isn't amazing, but it's not terrible. Their record should be way better than what it is if you're averaging the 24th best recruiting class over the last 5 years, right? So, somebody like a Bill O'Brien, if he wants to come to the Big Ten, screams
Great
to
hire.
me Nebraska. Even Jamie Chadwell from Coastal. Sorry, Medices, but I think he's another one that potentially fits there.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech, solid school. I think Georgia Tech's biggest problem is that their academics are on a higher
time.
level
Big time.
than just about everybody else in and around that area, right? So it's really hard to recruit. To give some comparison, I dropped Nebraska's number. I was nosing around today. Georgia Tech averaged 45th recruiting in the country over the last 5 years, right? So again, like there's a high level drop off. I'm with Coach from the standpoint of if you want long tenure, you probably got more runway at Georgia Tech. But if you're telling me what's the sexy pick and which one I'm going to, it's Nebraska to me all day.
So I agree with everything you guys said, but I will say this. I think Bill O'Brien would be a home run hire for Nebraska after what he did at Penn State, for the 2 years he was there. If I'm Georgia Tech, I call Deion Sanders ASAP. Deion played in Atlanta. His recruiting ties, I said this on the radio Sunday, Kirby Smart does not want to see Deion Sanders go to Georgia Tech because Deion will be a marketing genius to bring kids in there. But here's what I'll say. I think there's more talent in the state of Georgia than all the surrounding areas in Nebraska. I think you can recruit like hell. You're going to have to compete with Georgia and C-Bus. The academics is crazy.
Oh, it kills you.
And I don't know because it's an engineering school. I think they'd have to do something with the academics to try to get more kids in. But I think the biggest thing for me is going to be the expectations. I can take a guy like Dave Clawson and go to Wake Forest and be there for the next 25 years. If you go to Georgia Tech, and Medices, I'm going to say this, but if you go to Georgia Tech, it's similar to Syracuse. If you go 500 or better and go to a bowl game, you're probably there for 20-something years. If you go to Nebraska and you don't win within your first 2 to 3 years, I mean, you go back and look at Bo Pelini. Bo Pelini was like 41-15 or 41-18 at Nebraska and got fired. So I think with the expectations in Nebraska, I think it's a nightmare because if you do not win year 1, year 2, Nebraska leaving the Big 12 for the Big 10 was the biggest mistake Nebraska could have did. But here's the other thing. Nebraska you're in the Big 10 West. That Big 10 West is not very good. And I think you got a legit shot in the Big 10 West every year to win in that conference and play for a Big 10 championship every year against somebody from the Big 10 East. So I think everybody makes valid points, but I would say the more attractive job to recruit and have longevity at is Georgia Tech. Did we lose? C-Bus must have froze, but that's
he got
okay.
mad at you.
All right,
So-
get him out.
So you guys, let's just let's flip scripts. So we're saying, what was the more attractive job? So far, there's a lot of teams through the first 4 or 5 weeks that have been huge disappointments. And Jake, I'll start with you. Give me a team that you're most disappointed with so far through the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season.
Oh, well, there's a couple. I mean, I guess one that sticks out kind of is like Notre Dame a little bit, highly ranked. And then even I have to, if not Notre Dame, maybe even Oklahoma. Maybe they were ranked too high, but just starting off the year with Venables and him giving up a ton of points. I mean, I know they're getting used to his unique system, but it's not like Lincoln Riley left that place bare to the bone. They still have talent there. So I would say between Notre Dame and Oklahoma, for me, I would say Oklahoma's my biggest disappointment so far.
Medicis, how about you? Nikki's having some technical difficulties, but
he's trying to get back in.
He's trying to get back on. How about for you? Who's been the biggest disappointment?
I had Notre Dame as my number one, but my number two is Michigan State. Coming off a big year, Mel Tucker gets the big extension. I mean, yes, Washington got Michael Penix Jr., who, again, was very good in the Big Ten. But, I mean, the Minnesota loss, Maryland last week, three in a row, and they haven't looked very good in any of them. They're not good quality losses as well. I think Michigan State's not getting any easier. You got Ohio State this week, Wisconsin with a new coach, and then you got Michigan the following week. You could be looking at 2-5, 2-6, and at that point your season's over. So I think Michigan State is in desperate need of a huge win, and if they don't get it, I mean, their season's already over. So right now they're my biggest disappointment.
C-Bus, we got you back.
Yeah.
Who's been your biggest disappointment? There's so many teams so far that I've been disappointed with. How about who stands out?
I wrote a couple down here. I think I just heard Medicis talk about Michigan State. They were on my list. I got two. I hate saying this, but I think I say it every year. It's Texas A&M is definitely high up on my list. I'm sure that was probably already talked about. The other one that I refuse to talk about next year, and if I talk about him next year, you guys can all call me on the carpet. I'm done talking about Miami. Every single year feels like the last 5 years, I hear about
the U's back.
The U's back. We're turning around. We got all this talent. Look out. South Beach is back. Here we come. Blah. And then every year they fall flat on their face, right? They get their new head coach. They steal Cristobal from Oregon, and then they go and lose to Middle Tennessee. They barely squeak by Southern Miss. That's a team that they should do better. They should expect better. I know it takes some time, to turn things around, but man, they feel like the boy who cried wolf an awful lot to me every single year.
So you guys named
my biggest point.
You named 3 of my 4. I had A&M, who last year lost 4 games. This year they're 3-2. They got beat to App State, and now Jimbo Fisher. Everybody's saying he's got to give up play calling duties. So I had A&M. I had the Miami thing. I'm with you, C-Bus. I'm sick of everybody saying the U is back. Cristobal's a good recruiter. There's no doubt about it. But just because you get the recruits don't mean it's going to turn over to W. So we'll see what he can do. You guys mentioned Michigan State, but I will say the other one that I actually had Houston. I had Dana Holgorsen in Houston, who a year ago were 12-2. They're 2-3 this year. They got beat to Tulane, who was down to their 3rd-string quarterback. And I don't know if you guys have seen Holgorsen so far through the first 2 or 3 games. He looks like he has lost this team. And this is a guy who, again, he was rumored for a lot of big jobs. And so I've been really disappointed with him. And then I think the last one I had written down, guys, was Wisconsin. So much hype coming in, with Wisconsin in that Big Ten West too. Again, just like I said, Nebraska, all this hype with Wisconsin every year, and they get off to a horrible start. They can't find a quarterback at Wisconsin. So disappointed. There's a lot more teams than that. But I think if there's anybody who needs a win, because if A&M can beat Alabama, which they did last year, they potentially are going to fall to 3-3 on the year. A team that was picked to go to the playoff.
They're talking about some of the boosters. A&M talking about paying $95 million to buy Jimbo Fisher out if he continues down this path at the end of the year. And this buyout is $95 million.
Can you imagine that?
Insane. And they're talking about that the boosters will write that check if he continues down this path. So yeah, crazy.
What's also amazing is A&M, the last 2 years had supposedly the top ranked recruiting class too.
Oh, they're spending all kinds of money in NIL and everything. They're number 1 in NIL. Absolutely. Medicis is right. They've been throwing money hand over fist, and it means absolutely nothing so far. Has merited nothing.
Well, if you guys think about it, I mean, Jimbo Fisher, I mean, really, other than the year he had with Jameis Winston at Florida State, he left Florida State and the program was spiraling downhill there.
Yeah.
And now he's at A&M that had all these expectations every year. And again, he really hasn't done – Kevin Sumlin had as good a record as Jimbo Fisher has right now through X amount of games, and they fired Kevin Sumlin. So we'll see what happens with Fisher. I mean, I think he needs this week. I think they get hammered to Alabama. I don't even think it's going to be a game. But
they're on their backup quarterback now. So
Yep. So, guys, Herm Edwards, I hope he goes back to the NFL as part of that broadcasting crew because I loved him on SportsCenter and all that. I think he got – I mean, I get all the violations, but all the stuff you read about coaches giving the other coaches film and stuff to try to – you don't do that to your guys. No, you're going to win. You win with your guys. You go down with your guys. Who's the next head coach at Arizona State? Give me some good names. Jake, who you got? You got any good ones?
no, I mean, I think it's always the traditional names that you're always going to hear for every single job. Like the Coastal, the App State, those guys. I don't know if they're going to get a home run name. Like, when they got Herm, I was like, oh wow, that's a big hit right there. So I see them going with one of the smaller tier, the lesser conference, and trying to find a winning coach that way to bring him out there, or they might get an NFL guy maybe. But obviously with Herm, that didn't go too well, so they probably are going to go with the head coach at the lower levels.
C-Bus, who you got?
I jotted a couple names down. One was Blake Anderson from Utah State. Turned them around.
Yep.
Turned them around pretty quickly. Went 11-3 last year,
I like
which I thought was good. And then the other guy I thought was interesting was Kenny Dillingham, who's the offensive coordinator at Oregon right now, right? Because I think doing some research there, right? He was an assistant, grad assistant, I think, at Arizona State. He was at Memphis. He was at Auburn. He was at Florida State. So he seems like potentially somebody they could go in and get there. I think Arizona State's a more attractive job than Georgia Tech.
Great job.
The campus there is amazing. The facilities are amazing. They don't have a ton of competition in state. It's not like Arizona, is a powerhouse football program as well. I definitely think they can draw, a younger coach that, could potentially go in there and recruit. Herm recruited okay for a while, and then he got his hand slapped all over the place and total bush league with the reports on his assistants and on all that. That's just and to a guy like Herm, who I think we all feel like that we know him, a decent amount for as much as he's been on TV and radio and things like that. That was really frustrating to hear that's the way that went down.
Adesas, how about you? Who you like?
I got two names. I got Troy Calhoun from Air Force. Does a great job at Air Force. They're 4-1 on the year. The other name is Bronco Mendenhall. We had a lot of success at BYU. Got the job at Virginia, kind of struggled. He go back out to the West. He recruited well at BYU. He always had a winning
good coach there too. I said they were solid at BYU.
Rehab job. I think that's a name that we got to keep an eye on.
That's a good one.
I got a bunch of names. I'm surprised you guys didn't name some of mine here, but one of them I'll say is I think Hugh Freeze gets a shot somewhere. I know we had the violations and all that stuff, but I think at some point in time he's going to leap Liberty and for a Power 5 job. I'm not sure if this is the best fit for him. I think he'll get a look. The other one I really like, and I was reading about this today, that's really picking up steam, is Dan Mullen. I think Dan Mullen's going to get a serious look here. I mean, if you take the job he did at Mississippi State, now Mike Leach is winning at Mississippi State too. I mean, the Florida tie didn't go that well for Dan Mullen. I think he gets a look. Don't be surprised, Nick, if Tom Herman gets a look. He's in the NFL. I'm not saying he would get it, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a call for an interview. And I'm going to give you my sleeper. My absolute sleeper is Rick Newheisel. If you guys remember Newheisel.
How old is Rick Newheisel?
Newheisel's in his 50s. I'm just saying, I'm not telling you he's going to get it.
That dude was in his 50s 25 years ago.
Well, listen, here's I got to throw a name out there that you guys aren't thinking of. Rick Newheisel lives in Phoenix. And if you think about
he's playing golf every day because he's 80.
But if you think about, they're going to get hit pretty good with with
Yeah.
NCAA violations.
Agreed.
Bring a guy like
Newheisel.
Newheisel in.
He's
How old is he?
61, not 50. There's a big
Okay,
difference. there.
58, 61. I'm not saying the guy gets the job. He's my sleeper pick. I like Rick Newheisel. And one other sleeper pick, Chris Peterson, the former Boise State coach. Don't be surprised if he
All
gets
right.
a look for that
I
job
got
either.
you
So.
want a sleeper name? I got a sleeper name for
Who
you.
you got?
How about the head coach at Kent State, Sean Lewis? Kid turned that program around. They were a 2-win program for 4 years prior from taking it over. He's had them.
I like it.
winning. He had them winning the MAC East the last year. Tough to win in the MAC. They got to play a bunch of good non-conference schools. They're going on probation, right? You might be able to convince somebody like that to say, go ride the wave. Take these disciplinary actions for a couple years, and then you're coaching a Power 5 school. So you want a sleeper name.
I think that's a good name. Guys, our BCS top 4, I know it's changed the last couple times we've done the show, but let's see who you guys got for this week. C-Buffs, who you got in your 4?
I'm not changing from when I went before. I'm going Bama, Ohio State. I'm going Georgia. I'm going USC. I'm a little worried about my USC pick after I watched them almost stub their toe to Oregon State the week after I put them in my top 4. I'm not on this. Everybody's freaking out about Georgia's struggle in the last couple of weeks. That doesn't necessarily concern me. I think the talent's still there. I think the shakiest one outside of USC is Bama, right? I'm a little concerned offensively, even before Young got dinged last week. I'm a little more. I've just been concerned with. I haven't seen that dynamic pass game that we saw the last couple years, and we certainly know it's not because they're void of talent at Alabama, right? So I got a little bit of trepidation. I feel like Tennessee's primed to pick off Bama in a couple weeks if Bama doesn't straighten out. But my top 4 right now is you see my outside knocking on the door as it stands on October 6th would be the other California school, UCLA. I would put them in that top 6 right now from my perspective. Michigan's obviously in that top 6 as well, but UCLA is playing well.
Jake, who's your 4?
Man, just like Seba says, I think it's Bama and Georgia. I know Alabama is struggling, but they still have that pretty good defense, and it's amazing how the backup quarterback comes in and he's faster than anyone else on the field almost. And it's almost like, how's that guy not playing receiver for him? Maybe even
right.
But holy cow, like Georgia, I think that was just they went into that game thinking, we just had to show up. I mean, all good teams have those off days, and the Ohio State is rolling pretty well. Obviously, they're going to be playing on the road. I put my team, obviously, a homer, being Clemson ahead of Michigan a little bit because I feel like Michigan hasn't really played anyone quite yet, other than that one game, and then they're on the outside. And then my outside looking in is I like the way Oklahoma State's playing lately, with that good defense and everything. And I would say they're on the outside. So I would go Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson. And then the outside is Michigan and Oklahoma State.
Medici, so you got?
Nice.
Well, I guess since we're making Homer picks, no, I'm just kidding. I can't do that, but, I'm sticking with the same 4 I had before. I got Georgia 1. I got the winner of Michigan, Ohio State, which I went in saying Michigan. The way they're playing right now, I think I might switch it to Ohio State. But the winner of that game's the 2, Bama 3. And I had USC before as the 4, but I'm sitting here looking at their schedule, and they got Utah next week. That UCLA game at the end of the year looks a lot tougher than it was before. Notre Dame's playing a lot better, and then potentially Oregon in the conference championship. That's a heck of a run there to get in. So I thought before that was a nice, easy kind of stretch for them, and all of a sudden UCLA makes it a lot tougher. Oregon's playing better. I'm sticking with them for right now, but I could easily see them getting knocked off. And, then you got to start talking, that loser of Michigan, Ohio State, if both go in undefeated, even though they're not in that conference title game, do they sneak in as the the 4 seed if Clemson loses,
It's 9
if the
o'clock.
Pac-12 beats each other up. You really got to consider if it's 11-0 and 11-0, and their only losses to the other undefeated team, they might be sneaking in as well.
Well, I'm going to put mine on the screen. I got Ohio State 1. I got Bama, Michigan, Georgia. I'm going to be the homer pick and put Michigan ahead of Georgia. I think Georgia looked C-Bus, I'm with you. A win's a win. You can look ugly. They still got more talent than probably anybody out there. They looked really bad against the Missouri team.
They did.
But I know they'll bounce back. So I'm going to put Michigan ahead of Georgia. I think Ohio State right now is the best team in the country, hands down. The way they're rolling on offense, it's going to take a really, really good defensive outing to slow them down. I'm not 100% sold on Alabama. Even with Bryce Young in there, I don't think they've looked the same through the first 4 weeks as they've done in the past. They're still Alabama till somebody beats them. And Jake, I'm with you. I think Mike Gundy's got a legit shot to win the Big 12. I think Oklahoma obviously is down. We'll see Oklahoma, Texas this week. I like Mike Gundy to sneak in. I still like Lincoln Riley in that offense, but their schedule is, Medicis, you said their schedule is brutal down the stretch. I would love to see, and C-Bus, we're the Big Ten guys. I don't think Michigan and Ohio State are going to be undefeated when they play each other. But if they are, and it's a good game, I don't know how you keep either one of them out of the playoff. I know people aren't going to want to see it, but I think we'll be debating who's the better one-loss team. The strength of schedule is going to hurt Michigan down the stretch, the non-conference. But I still have the same 4. I just reversed a couple of my teams.
Are we going to have that? What happens if with Michigan, Ohio State, and then Penn State beats one of them, loses to the other, and then Penn State's in the championship? You still putting in Michigan, Ohio State like last time?
It's a good call out.
All right, you guys, let's do some predictions, and then we'll get to our parting shots here. The first prediction, the Red River. I know it doesn't have much. Brent Venables is getting a lot of heat already after back-to-back losses, and they looked horrible. Tip your hat to TCU, though.
Oh, they can play.
TCU has played really good football so far. Texas, Oklahoma. C-Bus, I'll start with you. Who you got?
Give me Texas. I think Ewers is back this week, is what they're saying. They're practicing without any limitations. I think they feel like they have some unfinished business because they had Bama on the ropes. I think you could maybe argue that if he doesn't get hurt, I think we all probably think that there's a really good chance that Texas wins that game, and they might win it running away by 10 or 14 there, right? So I'm gonna give me Texas.
Medicis, who you got?
I'm gonna agree for the same reason. I think Ewers comes back, and I think Texas is a completely different team with him than they are without him. Again, they gave Alabama, a scare, and he went down early. The end of the first quarter. So I just think with him on the field, they're a completely different team. And like you said, Oklahoma's struggling right now. I got Texas.
Jake, how about you?
I got to go with the same thing those guys said. And with just seeing Oklahoma struggling on defense and even offensively too, it's just I think they're going to catch Texas with the quarterback coming back. They're all going to be pumped up, ready to go, and and the way he played against Alabama, he can definitely throw the ball, and he's one of the. If he keeps playing like that, he could definitely be in the run for the Heisman even.
Well, I had to bring my brother-in-law's comment up, ride the mullet. I like Texas as well. I think Venables, the defense was exposed the last 2 weeks. They're struggling the last 2 weeks to stop the run. I think Texas comes back. I think Texas puts up at least 40 points in that one. So I'm going to go with you guys. I like Texas. Tennessee at LSU. Jake, who you got?
I'm going Tennessee. I think Tennessee's got it rolling. Hooker's doing a great job at quarterback. I think he feels comfortable in that offense, and you can see the difference. I think it's going to be a very close game. For some reason, LSU is always gives up a lot of points, and then somehow they battle their way back, and it's an ugly win. But I just see that Tennessee's offense being a little bit more high power than, Auburn's and the other team they came back and beat. So I'm going to go with Tennessee.
C-Bus, who you got?
Yeah, I'm struggling with this one. I've been on Tennessee now for really early on. I like them. man, going to Baton Rouge and winning is tough. I think I'm going to take Tennessee. The sole reason that they're playing in Baton Rouge at noon. If they were playing in Baton Rouge at 8:00 at night, I would be taking LSU because you let those Louisianans drink for 14 hours before kick. But I think a noon game helps Tennessee. I think they're feeling awfully good on Josh Heupel. So I'm going to take Tennessee.
Is LSU 3-1? I think
4-1.
they're
4-1.
4-1. Okay,
Yeah,
I
they just
keep
got
forgetting
past
that.
Auburn. Yeah,
That's right, because they had that loss early on, and then they
lost to Florida State on that
Yep,
game,
extra
that
point.
for extra point missed,
Yep.
and that's it. Everything else they've been solid.
Medicis, who you got?
I got LSU at home. I think Jaden Daniels is a difference maker at the quarterback spot, a dual threat. And you know what? I can't stand the guy, but I'm looking forward to Brian Kelly's dance after the game when they knock out Tennessee.
I'm all on Josh Heupel, man. I love Josh Heupel. When he got that job, a lot of people doubted him. I think he's come in, he's changed the culture there. I think Medicis or C-Bus, I'm with you. I think this Tennessee, if they get by LSU, I think they got a legit shot to compete against Alabama. So I like Tennessee in this one. I think they go there, and I think they beat LSU by double digits. I like them.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a fun one though. Good noon kick.
All right, the next one I got is Utah at UCLA. This one's gonna be a big game. C-Bus, who you got?
Man, give me Ucla, man. I'm all about UCLA right now. I like what Chip Kelly's doing there. I think Utah's a good program. I think they're kicking themselves for peeing down their leg first week of the season against Florida. But I definitely think that I definitely think UCLA is playing well. They're playing fast. Kelly has his offense really kind of humming. And I just think Utah is going to struggle to score enough points to hang with UCLA. So give me UCLA at home.
Medicis, who you got?
Not so fast, my friend.
Not so fast.
UCLA had a great game. I think the hangover is real. They're playing a really good Utah team that lost a couple weeks ago that a lot of people were saying could sneak into that BCS playoff. I have Utah, and I think they win by 2 scores.
Ooh.
Utah still got a shot to get to the playoff if they win out. Their schedule gets tougher. They still got USC down the stretch too. So, Jake, who you got?
Medicis stole my thunder. I said agreeing the same thing. Hopefully there's fans at that game. It sounds like no one comes out to the UCLA games anymore. So I have Utah. I think their defense is going to be prime and ready. I think, and like Nick says, they're coming off a hangover UCLA. So I can see Utah with their strong defense.
I got to pull for the Big Ten.
2 scores. I see field goal at the end.
I got to root for the Big Ten, Rock. Come on.
I know. Well, I think DTR, the quarterback there for UCLA, is one of the more underrated quarterbacks in college football. I think he's a good dual threat quarterback. The problem is for UCLA, this game's at the Rose Bowl, and as you guys said, nobody goes to the damn game. So I like Utah. If UCLA can put people in the stands, there's no excuses why they should not have that stadium full. This is a big game out there at the Rose Bowl. But I like Utah. I think if Utah wins out and they're a 1-loss conference championship team,
they got to run at it.
They got a shot to get in. So I like Utah in that game. I think it's close, though. I think it'll be a good game. All right, ACC matchup, Florida State at NC State. Jake, who you got?
Going with NC State. I think they're, coming off the loss with Clemson. They didn't play bad, but I think they're hungry and they want to kind of make a statement this game. So I see NC State in a blowout.
C-Bus?
Ooh, in a blowout.
And
it is.
Florida State hasn't won a road game for however long either over a ranked opponent either. I think it's been 5 years.
Yeah, something crazy like that,
Yeah.
right? I think I'm going to go NC State here as well. I wasn't overly impressed with NC State last Saturday. However, I don't think Florida State has the horses yet to get back there. They played Wake decently last week. They also have, Florida State has Clemson following this. Feels like a little bit of a foresight. Hey, we can't wait to play Clemson, and then they kind of get stung here. I got them in a close game. I think they're going to hang, but I'll give me NC State by 7.
Medicis?
Everyone in Syracuse is rooting for NC State. because good old game day could be calling Syracuse NC State the following week.
Not a chance.
Well,
Not a chance.
Again, if you look at
Is all the other college football games canceled? Is that why they're going?
All the big games are on Fox, and ESPN will want that game, that ESPN game. It's a 3:30 kick. At the writing, it's all kind of working itself out. NC State wins the game. Game day in Syracuse. We might be doing the Mohawk Valley Sports Watch on Saturday live, right next to game day.
Wait a minute. Doesn't Alabama play Tennessee next week?
Michigan, Penn State's next week.
It's on Fox.
It don't matter. They go there all.
Fox.
It doesn't matter. They still go.
Oh,
They're going to.
They were at Texas. Weren't they at Texas, Alabama?
Yeah.
Listen,
they're going to Kansas.
That game was on Fox.
They're still going out there.
They're going to the basketball schools now. Now it's the basketball tour. So they're at Kansas this week, Syracuse next week. Who knows?
Man,
maybe they'll get Duke the following week.
They already did their charity cake. They already went to Appalachian State.
The soccer team has a game in a couple weeks we're going to go to.
Jesus, I should mute you, but I won't. I should mute you, but I won't. The name we forgot to mention, when Todd Graham was at Arizona State, you know who his offensive coordinator was? Mike Norvell, the coach for Florida State. So don't be surprised. That's another name. I was just thinking of that on my notes here, that Mike Norvell jumped ship. A lot of pressure at Florida State. Maybe Deion goes back to Florida State. Maybe that's his way. NC State hammers Florida State. Florida State's like Miami. We keep saying we're waiting for Miami to be back. Yep. We said it this year. We need Florida State and the ACC to be better. They stink. NC State by 2 touchdowns.
I like it.
All right, let me see here. Got a couple more. Texas Tech at Oklahoma State. Medicis, I'll start with you this time. Who you got?
Well, it is about time for Oklahoma State to get that one big slip up against that non-ranked team that happens every single year. I'm going Texas Tech in a shootout with the upset on the road.
Ooh, okay. C-Bus, who you got?
No chance. I'm taking Oklahoma State. I think their defense is still strong. Texas Tech 3-2. Meh. I think Oklahoma State's riding high right now. They will stub their toe. Not this early in the year. Give me Oklahoma State by 10.
Jake?
Going Oklahoma State. I think they're just too strong defensively, and their Sanders at quarterback is, protecting the ball this year and being elusive with his legs and running the ball. So I think they blow them out.
So my brother-in-law says game day was at Tennessee last week, and that game was on CBS.
And also remember, Medicis, that ESPN is going to get even the full rights of all SEC games starting next year because CBS is going to be picking up Big Ten games. So They will definitely make sure that they're at an SEC school any chance that they can because that is where their bread is buttered.
Hey, the one thing I'll say, I like Oklahoma State at home. Texas Tech's getting a new facility. I saw the pictures. It looks like it's going to be a nice facility, but Mike Gundy at home. I think Oklahoma State, I said it earlier, guys, I think he's got a legit shot, maybe his best shot. But these are the games that he loses sometimes that slips him up. So, all right, I only got 2 more here. Washington State at USC. Jake, who you got?
I'm going USC. They're at home. I just think USC has too much power on offense right now for Washington State. So I'm going USC and another blowout.
C-Bus?
Yeah, I'm definitely rolling with USC. However, I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think Washington State, while they're not going to be able to score enough points, they're averaging close to 30 points a game. They definitely like to move the ball through the air. I think USC is a little susceptible right now to giving up the pass. So I think it's going to be closer than people think. Still USC, but I think it's going to be a little closer than people think.
Medicis, who you got?
I got USC, but I got to agree. I think it's going to be a close game. I think USC is starting to believe the hype a little bit and start looking ahead and seeing, all right, we're at Utah next week in a huge game. I think USC does win the game, but I think it's a lot closer than people think.
Cody says they might actually come to Syracuse. Don't be shocked. Well, I wouldn't be shocked because it's going to be 2 ranked teams, but if you have Michigan top
shocked.
10 and Penn State, they got to go to Michigan, Penn State, but we'll see. I like USC. I think USC beats them. Too much offense. I don't think Washington State will be able to keep up with them on offense. The question is going to be USC. Can they play any defense down the stretch against Utah and UCLA? You know they're going to score, but we'll see. All right, guys, here's my last one. Fordham. Colgate's off this week. So the Rams undefeated, statistically, the best quarterback in the FCS. He's going to be an NFL draft pick. They're fighting for the Patriot League title. Did they get it done at Lehigh? Their defense is terrible. They can't stop anybody. Medicis, who you got?
Fordham 56, Lehigh 35.
Right.
Fordham wins. Fordham wins big in a shootout only because Fordham's defense is very
Horrible. Bad. Yeah, they are very bad. C-Bus, who you got?
I'm not picking against the Rams, let it go against Lehigh. It's gonna be a high scoring game. You're right. Every time I look at Fordham's box score, they really can't stop anybody. But it's a good thing they can score 1 million points for sure. But I'll take give me Fordham, and let's go 48-41.
All right, Jake.
Well, I've actually been to a Lehigh game, and they have a pretty good crowd there, and it's a pretty tough place to play to go on down there. They have a pretty good fan base. Problem is Fordham has one of the better quarterbacks, and usually in the past, Lehigh is known for defense a little bit. So I'm going to say Fordham, but I think it's going to be close.
Ooh, okay. Lehigh's a tough place to play. I played there. That is a very tough place. When I played, Lehigh was the team in the Patriot League. It was always Lehigh, Colgate. Then I think Fordham's too strong on offense. Lehigh's going to score some points, 58-46 or 58-48. I want Holy Cross and Fordham both undefeated. That's going to be for the league championship here in a couple weeks. So I'll take Fordham. All right, guys, you ready for our finale? You ready for the pardon shots? Let's see who we can go first here. Let me just see if we got any other good comments here. Oh, my brother-in-law is taking Lehigh. He goes, Lehigh, Fordham stubs their toe this week. Oh, don't tell me that. I want them both undefeated. Cody says Fordham big, best quarterback in the nation. Statistically, he is the best quarterback.
Yeah. First overall pick, right?
No, Medicis, tell him what I said on the show. I just said he was going to be drafted. I didn't say he was going to be a first rounder.
No, he said he was going to be drafted.
Yep.
He didn't say first round.
All right. So with that, let's go to Medicis. You're up.
All right. Well, I know this is a college football rewind, but I want to take a second to talk some NFL and talk about the Miami Dolphins, my division rivals. I think they absolutely did not handle the Tua injury well at all. It bothers me. Again, the scapegoat is the doctor, but at the end of the day, we all have eyes and saw what happened. That is not a back injury. The guy was wobbling all over the place, and you mortgaged your future for a win in week 3. So if we're all about safety, it's time for the NFL to come in and hammer the organization. You thought, Spygate with the Patriots was bad. This is a person's life at hand. This is their future. The Miami Dolphins need to be hammered with a big penalty. It's just unfortunate what happened. And, we just hope that Tua is able to play again, hopefully this year, if not at all.
One of the things I'll say is I read just this week that there was a couple doctors that said Tua shouldn't play ever again if they were him. So we'll see what happens. All right, let's go to Jake.
Yeah. Well, my pardon shot's going to be to all the coaches out there. It is actually National Coaches Day, so it doesn't matter what sport you coach. So Rock and Medicis, happy Coaches Day.
Yep, same to you.
And C-Bus, I don't know if you coach, but you might. It could be T-ball even.
But I've patrolled the sidelines, but I typically get escorted out. So no, I'm just kidding.
No, but that's just just to all the coaches out there. You're gonna have your good days, your bad days, but cherish the little moments that you have on the field. Especially if you're having a tough season. Find the small things and know that relationships that you have with your players are everything. For example, we did our teacher appreciation thing, and a lot of teachers, our students, our players brought the jerseys to our teachers, and they loved that idea, and they put them on proudly. And even though the wins and losses aren't there like we want, but knowing that, those kids get to see the teachers and them light up, just even with letting them wear their simple jersey goes a long way. So just want to wish all those coaches out there, keep it going no matter what, and keep your head up.
It's definitely a tough job that not many people want these days is coaching. That's for
No,
sure.
we need all of them. So thank you guys very much, because
I just want to know what Medisa's buyout is for basketball. What is it? 25 right now?
Well, I'll tell you what, I got one of those jerseys today, and the first thing they say, and they hand me the jersey and say, "Don't get a stain on it." Like, am I a messy eater or something that they think I'm going to get a stain on the jersey?
Well, the question is, I never got a picture from you. Did you put it on?
Yeah, I did my time. I did my time. I couldn't breathe for a while.
Because the player
but
said, Coach, he couldn't get it over his shoulders. His shoulders were too big. I said, "Oh, okay." So.
All right, let me give C-Bus. What do you got this week?
Rock, you're not gonna like this one.
Probably not, but that's okay.
No. So we need to talk about Michigan's strength of schedule, Rock. So it's been bothering me forever. I'm looking at Michigan's non-conference schedule this year. They play Colorado State, Hawaii, and UConn. And we've talked about it, and I'm willing to say, all right, look, these things happen. Maybe they lost an opponent late. Then all of a sudden I look at who's Michigan playing in 2023 in the non-conference. Well, let me educate you guys. They are going to play East Carolina to kick off the season next year. Nice middle-of-the-road AAC team. Follow that up with the nice UNLV running Rebels. And then to wrap up the third week of their non-conference season, they're going to play the powerhouse of the MAC, Bowling Green. Not one Power 5 conference game again. Back-to-back seasons. Schedule a big boy every year. It's for your kids. It's for your fans. It's for recruiting. It battle tests your team. This just feels to me classic slimy Harbaugh, stacking the deck, making sure he wins 10 wins a year. So Rock and I don't come on here and argue about should we fire him or should we not. Go play the big boys. You're going to be better for it. What a letdown for the fans. What a letdown for his players. His credibility is already at the bottom of the basement, but it just keeps dropping.
UNLV's 4-1 this year. Bowling Green's on top of the MAC this year.
Get out of here.
Cut me some
Can't even
slack.
play a Power
And Urban's
5
going
team.
back to Bowling Green too.
Jeez.
So.
I said that. Remember that.
What a bunch of
I said Urban Meyer's going to be back at Bowling Green next year.
Then he can upset Michigan, and then he's the
up the
hottest
Rock.
coach.
Deion Sanders is coaching every team in college football as is Urban Meyer. There's only
Georgia Tech.
Georgia
Tech.
It's very true.
Georgia Tech or Florida State for Deion. Mark my words. One of the two. All right. Well, mine's going to be mine's a high school one, and Jake did a nice job of recognizing Coach Mize. So, C-Bus, you don't know Coach Tom Myslinski, but Tom Myslinski was a legendary coach here in Rome on the Mount Rushmore of coaches. Passed away just last week after a long battle with cancer. Coach Mize was a graduate of the class of 1963. Was a three-sport athlete here. Was a captain at the University of Maryland. Was an All-American there for football. Was drafted by the New York Jets. He had an injury just right before the Jets played in the Super Bowl. He was going to get called up to play in that game, but he had an injury. So unfortunately, the injuries prevented him from playing on that Jets team. In 1981, he came back to Rome to coach. He was the offensive line coach for the legendary staff in Rome, and Jake knows these guys, and Medicis knows them too. Tom Hoke, Coach Bruce, Bob Ryan. They worked together for over 26 years at Rome. And I'm going to steal a couple things that was in Coach's obituary because Jake honored Ray Tarkowski. The press box in Rome was named after Ray Tarkowski, who handled the PA there for over 25 years. Kelly Hoke, who at that time was Kelly McAlee, handled all the injuries. Coach Dwayne Nemai, we used to call him Dewey, handled the equipment. And then Art Newman, who is still on the sidelines today doing the balls at the age of 82 years old, or mid-80s. Coach Mize is a 1984 inductee into the Rome Sports Hall of Fame. and I'm going to read a quote verbatim that was one of his favorite Derek Jeter quotes. There may be people who have more talent than you, but there's no excuses for anyone to work harder than you. And one thing I can honestly say, and I talk about it all the time, a lot of people think some of those teams from RFA back in the day that we had really big kids. We didn't really have as big as kids. My center was 160 pounds. My two guards were 185 pounds. My tackles were 290, but we were always tough, hard-nosed kids. And I owe a lot of that. We all do to Coach Mize, and he's going to be missed. That's for sure. The weight room was named after Coach a while ago. So the calling hours for Coach are Sunday. The funeral mass will be on Monday. So to his two sons, Tommy and Timmy, and his wife, Debbie, and the entire Myslinski family, thoughts and prayers to everybody. Coach is going to be missed. He was a giant here in Rome. So good show, guys. Another good show, and always fun to talk some college football with you guys. And I'll be messaging you guys, and we'll run this thing back here soon. I'm sure we'll be talking about more coaches, and we'll see where everybody's at with the top four, and we'll see if we got any more clear direction on some conference winners. So it's been fun, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks,
guys.
All right, guys. We'll catch everybody later.
See you.
So I just want to thank the guys. That was awesome. And again, as I said, the Myslinski family, to all the family and friends, that Coach Mize impacted so many players, not just football players, but just players in general, track and field. He coached a lot of Giants, but just a horrible to see Coach passed away, but he'll be missed, that's for sure. So, as I say every time I do the rock pile is where dreams become reality. Have a good evening, everybody. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll see you next time right here